7-year-old Michael Chen disappeared from a crowded mall parking lot in 14 seconds. And what the FBI did next defied every protocol they'd ever been taught. Michael was the kind of kid who made everyone smile. With messy black hair that never stayed combed and a gap-toothed grin, he spent his days building Lego cities and asking his mother endless questions about how airplanes stayed in the sky. To Sarah and David Chen, he was their entire world wrapped up in Spider-Man sneakers and dinosaur t-shirts. Saturday, June 15th, started like any other weekend. Sarah had promised Michael they'd go to the mall to pick out a birthday present for his grandmother. He'd been talking about it all week, determined to find the perfect gift with his own saved allowance money. David kissed them both goodbye that morning, telling Michael to take care of his mom. Neither parent could have known those would be the last normal words they'd exchange for days. The security footage showed everything, yet revealed nothing that made sense. At 2:47 p.m., Sarah's phone rang while she was loading shopping bags into the trunk. She turned away for what she later swore was only seconds, just long enough to answer her sister's call about dinner plans. When she turned back, Michael was gone. The parking space beside her car was empty. No screeching tires, no screams, just silence and the hollow echo of shopping carts rattling in the afternoon breeze. The emergency call came through to the FBI's Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team at 3:02 p.m. Special Agent Marcus Webb, a 20-year veteran who'd seen far too many of these cases end badly, felt his stomach tighten as he read the initial report. Broad daylight abduction. Crowded location. No witnesses.
If this story made your heart feel something real, then maybe it belongs here. Subscribe to the Heartverse.
The first few hours were critical, and they were already burning through precious minutes. Sarah collapsed in the mall security office, her whole body shaking. The guilt crashed over her in waves that threatened to drown her. She kept replaying those 14 seconds, wondering what she could have done differently. Why did she answer the phone? Why didn't she tell her sister she'd call back? Why wasn't she holding Michael's hand? David arrived 20 minutes later, his face drained of all color. He didn't blame his wife, at least not out loud, but Sarah could see the unspoken questions in his eyes. The questions she was already asking herself in an endless, torturous loop. Meanwhile, Agent Webb assembled his team in a windowless conference room that smelled of stale coffee and desperation. They had the security footage, but the kidnapper had been careful. Baseball cap pulled low. Nondescript sedan. Plates that turned out to be stolen from another vehicle 3 counties away. The man had approached Michael with something in his hand. A phone, showing the boy what appeared to be a picture or video. Within seconds, Michael had followed him willingly to the car. He knew the boy's name, Webb said quietly, reviewing the footage for the dozenth time. Watch his lips. He says Michael right before showing him the phone. This wasn't random. This was planned. And that made everything infinitely more dangerous. 16 hours into the investigation, Webb made a decision that would later be called either brilliant or recklessly insubordinate, depending on who was telling the story. The traditional playbook said to keep the case quiet, work the evidence, follow procedure. But Webb had been studying the kidnapper's pattern, and something in his gut, that instinct developed over 2 decades of reading criminals, told him this case needed a different approach. He called a press conference. Not the standard plea for information. Not the typical tearful parents begging for their child's return. Webb did something the FBI manual explicitly advised against. He spoke directly to the kidnapper, and he made it personal. "I know you're watching this," Webb said, staring directly into the camera with an intensity that made even seasoned reporters uncomfortable. "I know you think you've planned everything perfectly. And you're right. You have been careful. Meticulous, even. But I've noticed something about you. The way you approached Michael. The care you took to make sure he came willingly, without fear. That tells me something important. Webb paused, letting the moment breathe. You're not a monster. Not yet. You've crossed a line, but you haven't crossed the final line. Michael's parents aren't angry right now. They're terrified. They're not thinking about punishment or justice. They're thinking about bedtime stories they'll never read, birthday cakes they'll never bake, first days of school they'll never photograph. You can end their nightmare. You can be the person who brought their son home. You have my word, my personal promise, that if you return Michael safely to any police station, any fire station, any hospital in the next 12 hours, I will advocate for you. I will tell the court that you made the right choice when it mattered most. The conference room erupted after the cameras stopped rolling. Webb's supervisor was livid. You just negotiated with a kidnapper on national television without authorization. But Webb wasn't listening. He was watching his phone, waiting. At 4:23 a.m., 19 hours after Michael disappeared, a night nurse at St. Catherine's Hospital found a small boy sleeping in the waiting room, covered with someone's jacket. He was unharmed, scared, but physically fine. The man who took him was never caught. But security footage from the hospital showed a figure in a baseball cap watching from across the street as medical staff discovered Michael. He stood there for nearly 3 minutes before walking away into the darkness. When Sarah and David arrived at the hospital, Sarah dropped to her knees and pulled Michael into her arms so tightly that he squeaked. David wrapped them both up, tears streaming down his face, as he kept saying, "Thank you," over and over to everyone and no one. Michael, confused by all the attention, mostly wanted to know if they could still get Grandma's birthday present. Agent Webb watched the reunion from a distance, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. His supervisor stood beside him, silent for a long moment before speaking. That was either the stupidest or smartest thing I've ever seen an agent do. Webb nodded slowly. I chose to believe that somewhere in that man there was still a shred of humanity left. I chose to give him a path back. Sometimes the impossible isn't about following every rule perfectly. It's about understanding that even in darkness, there's a crack where light can get through if you're brave enough to look for it. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to remember that hope isn't naive. It's the most courageous choice we can make. And hold your loved ones a little closer tonight. Because sometimes the ordinary moments are the miracles we forget to notice.